God did not call you to be omnipresent. He did not call you to be everywhere at the same time. It's impossible. That's his job. He called you to be obedient and faithful to the gifting and grace on your life. Hey, y'all, and welcome back to the Raven Nole Show. I'm your host, Raven C. Nole, and I just want to start off today by just saying thank you for joining me. It never goes unnoticed how you all show up for the Raven Nole Show. Maybe you are new here and this is your first episode, or some of my day ones, okay? It never goes unnoticed, that you would just support in this way and just be a part of what we're doing here on the Raven Nole Show. And so I'm just grateful to connect with you in this way. Now, in today's episode, we're going to have a little bit of a chit chat. All right. I want to talk about a topic that I think is so important to touch on, especially with what's happening in the world today. The world is cray cray, okay? There is a lot going on. Everywhere you turn, you're finding out something new, something tragic, something, just upsetting, something that just grieves you. And I just think it's about time that we have a little bit of a conversation that may be a little different than the content that I typically put forth on the Raven Nole Show. Now, a lot of the content I bring forth on the podcast is for the multifaceted woman, is to support you in thriving in every area of your life with God at the center. And today's going to be no different. However, the tone may be just a little bit different than usual. Okay. And so today we're going to be confronting something that I think a lot of us are quietly processing through and maybe even exhausted with. And that's the pressure to perform. And when I say that, I don't mean in the typical way that you would think about performing. I'm talking about participating in things God never told you to touch on. And we are going to dive deep into that today, okay? And so I want to start off with just being real, right? As multifaceted women, women who are leaders, women who are builders, women who are nurturers, we often feel like we have to show up for everything. It's our nature, right, to wear many hats. It's our nature to be included in different aspects of life that pull us in all kinds of different directions. But that can also make us feel as if we have to show up in every trend or every conversation or every cause or every crisis. And we find ourselves inserting ourselves in a lot of things that we shouldn't. We can feel as if we don't speak on certain topics, or we don't post about certain things, or we don't weigh in, we're somehow behind, right? Or uninformed or unbothered. But I want you to hear me today. What if, okay? What if that trend, that conversation, that cause, that crisis, what if it was never connected to your assignment? What do I mean by that? What if the pressure to have a voice or be included or insert yourself in everything is actually pulling you out of your position in the kingdom of God? Now, I wanted to do this episode today because I am constantly seeing the pressure online for people to respond to current events, to respond to, this or that, what's ever happening in the world right now. It's like people are beckoning. You have to respond. You have to have something to say. You have to share your opinion. And it can feel very pressurous, right? And so I want to ask you a question today, right? When it comes to that pressure to perform and just outside of online, in your family, in the workplace, in church, whatever, I want you to ask yourself, what standard are you living by? Is it God's standard, or is it the pressure that society and this world places on you? Now, before you answer too quickly, I need you to understand, first and foremost, that God didn't create you to perform. He did not create you to tap dance online, to get likes and comments and reshares. He did not create you to fold under the pressure of people's opinions or desires of you. He did not create you to perform. He called you to be faithful and a good steward over the calling and purpose on your life, okay? Not the calling and purpose on anyone else's life, not her life, not his life, not their life over there. He called you to be faithful and a good steward over your own calling and purpose, the one that he uniquely assigned to you. Okay. And so I need you to understand that we are living in a society, okay, where visibility can oftentimes equal value, right? And you probably see that for yourself. We're in a social media driven world. And if you are silent on an issue in the last like couple of weeks, couple of months, past year, people are calling you out left and right. I mean, it is crazy out here on these internet streets, okay? You know, they're like, why are you not talking about this? Why are you not saying anything about this? If you don't say anything, then you must feel this way. If you don't say this, then we're deeming you this. And it's just so much pressure from every area to have an opinion. And I do understand that we are living in a time where your opinion is literally like currency. And I mean that because people get paid online for their opinions, okay? It's a way that they make money. But I need you to hear me clearly. God did not call you to be omnipresent. He did not call you to be everywhere at the same time. It's impossible. That's his job. He called you to be obedient and faithful to the gifting and grace on your life. Now, Romans 12:6 says, we have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. That means you are graced for your lane. You're not graced for anyone else's lane. And your only responsibility is to your assignment. Okay? You're not responsible for the grace on someone else's life. Maybe their grace is to include themselves in all kind of commentary. Maybe their grace is to include themselves in the crisis that happens in society and in this world. Maybe their grace is ministry or politics or government or social justice or online stuff, whatever, right? Maybe that's their grace. But if it's not your grace and it's not your assignment, it's not your responsibility. Okay. And so again, you're only responsible for your assignment, not their desire for your opinion. And I really wanted to make that clear because we're in this day and age, y'all, where it can feel as if you are in error if you don't respond to the pressures online. It hits you from everywhere, right? You know, you can just scroll on social media and everyone has a post about this. People are fighting, people are bickering, this side, that side. And you can feel as if I need to say something, right? But I need you to understand this as well. There's a difference, okay, between having an awareness of something and being assigned to it. There is a big difference. I'm going to say that again, between having an awareness of something and being assigned to it. Now, you can be compassionate about a thing, right? I'm very, compassionate to a lot of things that I see online, right? You can feel compassion. We should be moved by compassion, right? We see the lives of others and we should be compassionate towards those who are going through loss or grief, those who are going through some type of illness, those who are going through some type of injustice, those who are struggling in certain areas. We should be compassionate towards individuals. But just because you are compassionate about a thing, it doesn't mean that you are called to it. You can show compassion and not have a calling to be an answer to it, right? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have an opinion. I think we should all have an opinion. You have the right to your opinion. You have the right to how you feel about a thing. You have the right to, your emotions towards a thing. But at the end of the day, what we have to understand is that at every turn, we're going to be informed about what's happening in this world. Okay. And we can get it confused because all you have to do is turn on the news on your television. All you have to do is open up an app like Instagram or Facebook, and you're going to be informed in some way. Okay, just pull that app up and boom, it's there. You're going to see something that's happening in the world. You're going to see some type of hot take for the day. You're going to see what's happening in different states across the United States. You're going to see things about, what's happening in different nations. You're going to see some things. And so it's not that you're not going to be informed, right? You're going to see some things that maybe, in all honesty, shouldn't be shared on the internet, right? I don't think that us as human beings have the capacity to digest some of the things that we are digesting. It's really not good for us mentally nor emotionally. And we become disconnected to the feeling and emotion of seeing some of these things so often, because it's not something that we really should see, as often as we do. And so we're going to be informed. Like I said, we're going to have some level of information of what's going on. But just because you are informed, just because you have a level of information, doesn't mean you have the knowledge bank to speak on it. That's what I want you to understand, right? It doesn't mean that you're going to have the authority to confront it. It doesn't mean that you are going to be called to be involved in it. Sometimes your assignment, okay, to the awareness that you have of the situation, because again, we're always going to have some level of information. Whatever that level of awareness you have of that crisis or that injustice, sometimes your assignment is simply to pray. It's just simply to pray. It doesn't mean that you have to post your opinion. It doesn't mean that you have to involve yourself in the conversation. It doesn't even mean that you have to voice how you feel about it. Now, if you're burdened by it and you are deeply grieved by something that you become aware of or something that you see, then by all means, grow in your knowledge of it, grow in your understanding of it. Maybe the occurrence, of the crisis or the situation or the injustice awakened a new passion or new assignment in you. That can happen, right? The Lord can bring things to your awareness and then let you know, hey, I'm assigning you to this. I'm going to make you a solution to this. This is an area that I want you to focus on, right? And that's great. But that key word there is new, right? Sometimes we don't have the knowledge bank yet to insert ourselves. We haven't studied the history of the issue yet, right? We haven't studied the word of God or God's mind or heart pertaining to the crisis, right? To determine what God even has to say about it. And so we have to be careful with that. Now, Galatians 6:4 and 5 puts it very plainly. It says, be careful. It says, pay careful attention to your own work, for each one should carry their own load. I want you to know that it's not selfish to not involve yourself. It's not selfish to not involve yourself. And it's also not selfish to not state your opinion. What it actually is proper stewardship. And guess what else it is? It's wise. So I hope that you can hear my heart today, because what the enemy would love to do is to use distraction as a disguise for good intentions. He'll make you think that you're being purposeful while you're actually thinking that this is no harm. I'm doing this for the greater good, right? But you're actually doing more harm than you are good, especially if you are aware of a situation, aware of a crisis, aware of an injustice, but you're not properly equipped knowledge-wise to speak to the matter. I think that that's something that we have to really process with the Lord. Why do we tend to insert ourselves in things that we have not studied ourselves to get the history on, to get the proper understanding of, right? We are so quick to try to just share without really doing our due justice and learning before inserting ourselves. And so I want you to rest in knowing today that being faithful and serving the Lord doesn't always mean that it's going to be trendy. I think sometimes we get it wrong. We think that faithfulness is how we show up where others can kind of measure us, right? But faithfulness does not beg for likes. Faithfulness does not beg for amens. Faithfulness does not beg for retweets, reposts, or for others to agree, right? Faithfulness, quite frankly, is obedience. And so, it's really waking up and showing up where God has actually sent you. Again, not where he sent someone else, not where he's positioned anyone else. Faithfulness is often about stewarding the thing that's not popular, that doesn't go viral, but it does carry weight in the spirit. Okay. So, again, in the wake of society and life and crisis, I just want you to pause before you comment, before you engage, before you respond, before you share your opinion or your hot take. I want you to pause and just simply ask yourself a couple of questions. Number one, is this mine to carry? Is this is this my burden to bear? Right? That's a real question. Should I even bear this burden, or am I taking on a false burden that's not even mine because I am succumbing to the pressures of what everybody else thinks I should be doing right now? I want you to actually ask yourself as well, did God call me to speak on this, or am I responding again based on pressure? We really have to measure sometimes if this is an important thing for us to respond to. If you are giving your energy to this, you better make sure that God is giving you the grace to navigate what comes with what you just inserted yourself in. Okay. And then lastly, I want you to ask yourself, am I present in my purpose, or am I reacting based on what others want from me? That's another important one because, again, earlier I just let you know what the enemy does is try to distract you and disguise it as good intentions, okay? Because what you have to understand is that God is not, grading you on your social media engagement. He's not grading you on the best hard controversial, conversations that you can have on a topic. He's measuring you by your faithfulness. And I do understand that, some of us have a mantle where God has called us to confront certain areas. He's called us to be a little bit more confrontational. But I want you to take off that hat if it's not yours, okay? And I want to give you a permission slip today. You have permission. Here's your little slip, okay? I'm writing a little invisible slip for you. You don't have to show up everywhere. You don't have to chime in on everything. You don't have to carry what's not yours. And I want you to also understand that you are not less spiritual or in error because you're not always in the mix. It is better to find yourself disconnected from confusion and mixture and argumentative environments if God has not called you there. You're not in error. Again, you are wise, okay? And so I want you to see yourself as well as being faithful. I think a lot of times when we are seeing what other people are doing, we can look at ourselves and say, well, maybe that's what I should be doing as a Christian, or that's what I should be doing as, a woman that's called to this or a woman that's called to that. But I want your ability to separate yourself from things that God has not called you to as faithful to the thing that God has actually called you to. Okay. And that's what's going to make the most impact through your life, through the grace on your life, through your calling, and through your purpose in the earth. And that's also what's going to bring you the most peace. You may be like, this is just so upsetting and just so unsettling. And, I'm just so anxious and I have so much going on. Maybe you've inserted yourself in things that God never told you to connect to. And that's a real thing. And so disconnecting yourself from those things and connecting yourself to the calling on your life, that is what's going to multiply the fruit in your life. So let the world perform. Listen, woman of God, let other people insert themselves in things that God ain't called them to. But for you, my love, be faithful to what God has called you to and those things alone. Okay? So if this hit home for you today, I would love for you to share it with a sister or a friend who's just been battling that pressure to be everything, to be everywhere, to insert themselves in all conversations that God just he ain't told you to do that, right? He ain't told you to do that. And I also want to make sure you're subscribed to my newsletter by clicking the link in the show notes where I'm going to give you more encouragement and practical tips to help you thrive as a multifaceted woman. Well, I hope that this short episode encouraged you. I really just wanted to have this chit chat with you because I think it's just so important that we start to make the main things again, and not allow ourselves to get entangled with things that God has not called us to insert ourselves in. Until next time, keep thriving and making an impact.